Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Wednesday, 13th August 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. In the United States, President Donald Trump revoked a 2021 executive order issued by Joe Biden intended to promote competition in the U.S. economy, thus unwinding initiatives affecting agriculture, drugs, and labor. A U.S. appeals court further empowered President Trump by allowing him to slash billions in foreign aid. After a tariff-induced buying surge subsided, as car sales slowed, impacting major automakers like Ford, GM, and Volvo. President Trump also announced Aretha Gaynor, Gene Simmons, and Sylvester Stallone as Kennedy Center Honors recipients and would host the show. President Trump's administration brokered the peace deal between Armenia and Azerbaijan, reopening the shortest silk route between China and Europe. The U.S. also sanctioned Brazilian health officials over Cuba's coercive labor export of medical workers. Looking ahead, President Trump is scheduled to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska, with his goals remaining somewhat undefined, though he has indicated a willingness to abandon the meeting if no agreement is reached. He has warned Vladimir Putin of severe consequences if Russia refuses to end the war in Ukraine, but also suggesting limited power to change Putin's behavior. President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine and Chancellor Friedrich Merz of Germany collaborated with President Trump on a Russia-Ukraine strategy via video call to support Ukraine. Further escalating tensions in the South China Sea, the U.S. deployed warships USS Higgins and USS Cincinnati near Scarborough Shoal after Chinese ships collided while trying to drive away a Philippine vessel. Shifting focus to Russia, WhatsApp and Telegram are facing restrictions, with users reporting disruptions in call quality and connectivity attributed to the apps allegedly facilitating crime and sabotage amid tightening internet restrictions during the war in Ukraine. The Russian army reportedly made its biggest 24-hour advance in Ukraine in over a year, taking or claiming 110 square kilometers on August 12, marking the largest gain since late May 2024. The family of David Barnes, a Texan serving a 21-year sentence in Russia, hopes the Trump-Putin summit will lead to a prisoner exchange. Ukrainian experts and politicians have mixed expectations regarding the upcoming meeting between us, President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska amid the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Tensions surrounding the Russian invasion of Ukraine and fruitless talks to end the conflict strain Trump and Putin's relationship as they prepare to meet in Alaska. Russian forces are closing in on the eastern Ukrainian city of Dobropilya, causing urgent evacuations of residents near the front line. Some Russians still question whether Alaska is truly American. Chinese aircraft leasing companies have incurred huge losses due to the Ukraine war, with one firm receiving us $23 in insurance payouts for 3 planes detained in Russia. Turning to Ukraine, day 1267 of the war, with Russia saw continued conflict. Russian forces are closing in on the eastern Ukrainian city of Dobropilya, causing urgent evacuations of residents near the front line. President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine and Chancellor Friedrich Merz of Germany worked with President Trump on a Russia-Ukraine strategy via video call to support Ukraine. Ukrainian experts and politicians have mixed expectations regarding the upcoming meeting between us, President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin, in Alaska amid the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Many Ukrainians want an end to years of war, but are reacting with wariness to President Trump's upcoming meeting with Russia's Vladimir Putin. Across the globe in China, And amid US-China tension, Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. visited India, resulting in the elevation of bilateral relations into a strategic partnership centered on maritime security. Economists warn of China's shock too in sectors like EVs, clean energy, AI, and biotech, fearing China may overtake Western leadership. Chinese aircraft leasing companies have incurred huge losses due to the Ukraine war, with one firm receiving US $23 in insurance payouts for 3 planes detained in Russia. China's military stated that a U.S. destroyer, the USS Higgins, illegally entered China's territorial waters around Huanjin Island in the South China Sea. The U.S. deployed warships, USS Higgins and USS Cincinnati, near Scarborough Shoal in the South China Sea, after Chinese ships collided while trying to drive away a Philippine vessel. Both China and the Philippines claim the shoal, along with other nations asserting claims in the contested waters. Meanwhile, in the United Kingdom, Foreign Secretary David Lammy referred himself to the Environment Agency after fishing illegally with J.D. Vance, the U.S. Vice President, during Vance's UK trip. Lammy failed to acquire the necessary rod license for fishing in the lake at Chevening House. Finally, in the Philippines, and amid US-China tension, Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. visited India, resulting in the elevation of bilateral relations into a strategic partnership centered on maritime security. The U.S. deployed warships, USS Higgins and USS Cincinnati near Scarborough Shoal in the South China Sea after Chinese ships collided while trying to drive away a Philippine vessel. Both China and the Philippines claim the shoal, along with other nations asserting claims in the contested waters. Ukraine is facing increased pressure as Russian forces have broken through Ukrainian defense lines near Dobropilya. Small, agile Russian sabotage groups are also infiltrating Ukrainian territories, posing a challenge to Ukrainian forces. Simultaneously, United States President Donald Trump has issued a strong warning to Russian President Vladimir Putin, threatening very severe consequences if Putin does not agree to a ceasefire in Ukraine during their upcoming summit in Alaska. Trump has also floated the idea of a subsequent 3-way summit involving Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky should the Alaska meeting yield positive results. Concerns are mounting among European leaders and Ukraine regarding the potential outcome of the Trump-Putin summit. There are fears of a repeat of the Yalta summit, where the fate of Europe was decided without the consultation of affected nations. Zelensky has been actively engaging with allies to solidify support ahead of the Trump-Putin meeting, especially in light of a territorial swap proposal gaining traction, a concept that faces significant resistance from Ukrainians due to military, humanitarian, and political considerations. Analysts believe Putin may attempt to leverage the meeting as Trump seeks to resolve the conflict in Ukraine. Prior to the US-Russia summit, a crucial meeting was held bringing together European leaders, Trump, Vice President Vance, Zelensky, and the head of NATO. Turning to the United Kingdom, Vice President J.D. Vance engaged in discussions with Nigel Farage, a known supporter of President Trump, during a visit to the UK. Vance was also hosted by British Foreign Secretary David Lammy. In other news, Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has authorized police to release the ethnicity and nationality of suspects in high-profile cases. While this move aims to improve the justice system, it has raised concerns among campaigners about potential repercussions for race relations. In Israel, as the Prime Minister advocates for a full occupation of Gaza, some Israeli soldiers are voicing their weariness and advocating for an end to the ongoing war. Finally, K-pop Demon Hunters, a Netflix animated film centered around a girl band protecting their fans from supernatural threats, is set to grace UK cinema screens with special sing-along events. The ongoing conflict between Israel and Palestine has intensified, with severe consequences for civilians in Gaza and the West Bank, attracting widespread international condemnation. In Gaza, Israeli military operations have escalated, tragically resulting in 123 deaths in Gaza City in a single day, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. Starvation is now widespread in the region due to exorbitant prices for essential goods and significant obstacles in obtaining aid. Over 100 aid organizations have accused Israel of weaponization of aid, claiming the obstruction of millions of dollars intended for starving Palestinians. Access to life-saving treatment is severely restricted, as evidenced by the plight of Abdul Karim Wardan, a child in Gaza suffering from kidney failure. In the occupied West Bank, tensions flared further when an Israeli settler fatally shot a Palestinian man during a land-leveling operation. Internally within Israel, Lieutenant General Ayod Zamir, the military's chief of staff, has resisted proposals to control Gaza City, creating friction within the government. Reports also indicate that some Israeli soldiers are calling for an end to the war amid the Prime Minister's reported push for a full occupation of Gaza. Criticism has been leveled against Israel for its failure to prosecute any suspects in connection with the October 7, 2023, Hamas-led attack, despite holding at least 200 Palestinian suspects. The killing of Al Jazeera journalists in Gaza by Israeli forces has spurred global protests and vigils in cities such as Cape Town, Manila, and London, raising critical concerns about press freedom and journalist safety. Al Jazeera reported that an Israeli strike killed several of its journalists, including Anas al-Sharif in Gaza City. Israel claimed al-Sharif worked for Hamas, which he denied. Journalists worldwide, from Mexico City to Manila, are protesting these killings. In Europe, banners with the message, "Stop Killing Children." Civilians appeared at a UEFA match following criticism over a Palestinian tribute in response to a Palestinian player killed by Israel. Moving to New Zealand, MP Chloe Swarbrick was suspended from Parliament for a standoff over a bill sanctioning Israel during a debate on recognizing a Palestinian state. In Iran, President Masoud Pezeshkian has criticized Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's offer of assistance with Iran's water crisis, referencing Israel's treatment of Palestinians. Shifting to Turkey, Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan has urged both Israel and Kurdish fighters to cease actions destabilizing Syria's security. Finally, Zakaria Zubaidi, a Palestinian militia and theater leader, has spoken after his release from prison during a recent truce, reflecting on the accomplishments of his many lives. China is preparing for heavy rains as tropical storm Podul threatens its southern maritime provinces. The country is also grappling with the aftermath of recent flooding near Beijing, where 31 people died in a nursing home, exposing flaws in emergency planning. To boost domestic spending, China has initiated 2 stimulus programs, subsidizing loan interest for consumers and service businesses. On the technology front, the Sileodu Dam has replaced Siemens industrial control chips with domestically produced alternatives due to national security concerns. Chinese scientists have accelerated hybrid crop development using gene editing and AI robotics. Apple is testing Douyin Pay on its China App Store, potentially adding it to the existing payment methods of Alipay, WeChat Pay, and China Union Pay. In foreign policy, China has cut ties with Czech President Petr Pavel after his meeting with the Dalai Lama, claiming a breach of political agreements. Sanctions were also imposed on 2 Lithuanian banks, UAB Urbo Bankas and Abnano Bankas, in response to prior financial sanctions. Regarding military matters, China claims it drove away a U.S. destroyer near Scarborough Shoal in the South China Sea. A Chinese geopolitics expert suggests that China could attend Pacific Islands Forum leaders meeting side events even if dialogue partners are blocked. Ganfeng Lithium, a Chinese company, will merge 3 brine deposits in Argentina with Lithium Argentina of Switzerland. Chinese experts deployed the Storm I, SNON, in the construction of world's first fusion nuclear power generation reactor. Turning to the United States, President Trump has extended a tariff truce with China for 3 months, maintaining a pause in escalating trade tensions. The U.S. Navy experienced a confrontation with the Chinese military, which claimed to have driven away a U.S. destroyer near Scarborough Shoal in the South China Sea. Globally, the prescription drug market is expected to reach $2.45 trillion by 2032, driven by chronic illnesses and aging population. Japan's Nikkei 225 stock index continued its upward trajectory, reaching a new high for the second day in a row, surpassing 43,000. The country's alliance with the U.S., spanning 8 decades, has been crucial in deterring Soviet and Chinese influence. Due to declining participation, overseas WW2 memorial services for Japanese families are drawing to a close. Japan and Australia have finalized a substantial $18 billion, US $6.50 billion, agreement for advanced warships. Mitsubishi Heavy Industries will produce 11 Mogami-class stealth frigates for the Royal Australian Navy, potentially transforming the security dynamics of the Indo-Pacific and revitalizing Japan's defense sector. In a significant law enforcement action, Japanese narcotics agents confiscated 1.046 tons of cannabis, valued at approximately 5.2 billion yen, $35 million, representing the country's largest single drug bust. A recent survey revealed that 1 in 55 Japanese middle school students are abusing over-the-counter drugs, primarily sourced from pharmacies in their own home. Ichiba is spearheading a new regional economic initiative aimed at facilitating the expansion of Japanese companies into India, the Middle East, and Africa. The Japanese startup Samansa is focusing on producing short films for commuter entertainment. McDonald's Japan has discontinued a Happy Meal promotion featuring Pokemon cards. Following a collision between a yacht and a cargo ship off the coast of Japan, 1 person died, and the Coast Guard is conducting search operations for others. Beijing summoned Japanese diplomat Akira Yokochi to voice concerns regarding Taiwan, historical matters, and the safety of Chinese nationals residing in Japan. Transitioning to South Korea, President Lee Jae-myung is scheduled to meet with Japanese Prime Minister Ishiba in Tokyo before proceeding to a summit with U.S. President Donald Trump, where discussions will center on regional peace and collaborative effort. In individual legal matters, Japanese pop idol Kenshin Kamimura, previously a member of the boy band One Only, was found guilty of indecent assault against his female interpreter in a Hong Kong court. Furthermore, in a Melbourne court, 2 Japanese soccer players, including Australian A-League player Riku Danzaki, 25, confessed to charges of match-fixing and betting-related corruption. INA is facing increased scrutiny over human rights concerns, according to a recent U.S. report citing abuses in 2024. Trade relations between India and the U.S. are strained, with the U.S. Treasury Secretary describing India as a bit recalcitrant during trade negotiations. The Indian consulate in Chicago has condemned the desecration of a Baptist Swaminarayan temple signboard in Greenwood, Indiana, calling for immediate law enforcement action. Domestically, waste pickers in New Delhi are enduring hazardous conditions, facing temperatures as high as 70 degrees C, 158 degrees F, and exposure to toxic fumes at landfill sites. The city is also grappling with the management of its stray dog population, balancing public safety and animal welfare amidst resource limitation. Economically, Tesla has entered the Indian market by opening its first showroom anticipating growth in the competitive electric vehicle sector. The Indian government aims to increase nuclear power production by allowing private firms to mine and import uranium, targeting a 12-fold increase in capacity by 2047. India's maritime capabilities are set to expand with the commissioning of 2 new stealth frigates, INS Udaygiri and INS Himgiri, scheduled for August 26 at Visakhapatnam, further strengthening ties with Japan. India has designated 2025 as an exchange year for science, technology, and innovation, and is seeking enhanced Japanese involvement in its high-speed rail project. Pakistan is also facing scrutiny for human rights issues, as documented in the US report detailing abuses in 2024. The US State Department has characterized relations between the US and Pakistan as good, claiming top US leaders were involved in stopping the potential catastrophe between India and Pakistan. President Trump has been actively engaged in diplomatic efforts, holding discussions with European leaders and Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky to prepare for a possible summit with Putin. These talks featured an emergency virtual summit with European leaders and Zelensky, preceded by Zelensky's meetings in Berlin with European leaders and a virtual call with Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance. During these conversations, Zelensky maintained that Putin's talk of sanctions was a bluff aimed at pressuring Ukraine. Trump also voiced criticism regarding media coverage of his planned meeting with Putin, alleging corruption in their reporting. European powers are contemplating the reimposition of sanctions on Iran, utilizing a snapback mechanism embedded within the 2015 deal, which had initially eased on Security Council sanctions. Turning to the United States, A.J. Antoni, nominated by Trump for a position as labor statistics chief, was present at the Capitol building on January 6th, raising questions regarding his role and potential involvement in the events of that day. In France, air conditioning is not a common feature in homes. Only approximately 25% of French households are equipped with it, reflecting a different approach to climate control compared to other nations. Lastly, New Zealand, specifically in WHAM, a couple is embroiled in a legal battle, accused of defrauding a person of more than $1 million net. The alleged fraud was perpetrated under the pretense of raising funds for cancer treatment, adding a layer of deception to the case. France's President Emmanuel Macron has recognized France's involvement in the harsh suppression of independence movements during Cameroon's fight for independence. This acknowledgement comes after a joint French-Cameroonian report was issued in January detailing France's colonial history. Meanwhile, in New Caledonia, the pro-independence flanks has dismissed France's Bougival project, which outlines the territory's future, as the group continues to strive for full sovereignty and independence. France is also struggling with wildfires, intensified by a significant heat wave affecting southern Europe, where temperatures are climbing past 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Across Europe, a dangerous heat wave is causing temperatures to hit as high as 44 C. This extreme heat is fueling wildfires, particularly in southern Europe, impacting countries such as France, Spain, and Portugal, where firefighters are working to control the blazes. Experts such as Ajit Niranjan and Adam Taylor are investigating the factors causing Europe's accelerated warming and considering ways to mitigate the impact of the heat. Britain, France, and Germany are threatening to reinstate sanctions against Iran. This signals growing anxiety about Iran's nuclear program as a critical deadline nears. Australia experienced a 3.2 magnitude earthquake near Melbourne's Mornington Peninsula, with tremors felt widely across the region. The Victorian government could save nearly $500 over a decade by ending greyhound racing, according to the Parliamentary Budget Office. In environmental news, The Albanese government continues to back salmon farming in Tasmania's Macquarie Harbour, despite environmentalists' fears for the endangered margin skate. Responding to a major algal bloom off South Australia, the government is fast-tracking an expert assessment aiming to protect vulnerable marine life such as dolphins. Italy is grappling with another migrant tragedy off the coast of Lampedusa, where at least 20 migrants perished and a dozen are still missing after 2 boats carrying approximately 100 migrants capsized. 60 individuals survived these shipwrecks, the reasons for which are currently under investigation by Italian officials and UN agencies. Filippo Ungaro of the UNHCR conveyed his deep anguish, also noting the likelihood of a rising death toll. Brazil is grappling with economic headwinds due to tariffs imposed by the United States. President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has responded by unveiling a $5.50 billion credit package under the Sovereign Brazil Initiative. Brazilian senators, bridging political divides, journeyed to Washington to advocate against the tariffs. President Lula also sharply criticized Donald Trump's past actions against Brazil's judiciary, stating that Trump would face prosecution in Brazil had the January 6th U.S. Capitol attack occurred there, especially given Trump's sanctions against a Brazilian Supreme Court judge. Taiwan experienced the impact of Typhoon Paddle, leaving 1 person missing near Taitung and causing injuries to 33 others. The storm prompted the evacuation of over 7,300 individuals, with reports of fallen trees and signs throughout the affected areas. The National Fire Agency noted that the typhoon struck regions still recovering from earlier storms, leading to the closure of schools and government offices as a safety measure. Meanwhile, William Lai Ching-te, Taiwan's leader, received scrutiny from Japanese media following the unsuccessful recall vote that was initiated by civil groups and supported by his Democratic Progressive Party, DPP. Thailand is grappling with increased military influence amid continued political instability stemming from border clashes with Cambodia. The Thai government will compensate Malaysian tourists, Gan Xiaojian and On Yik Leong, injured in a Bangkok fire attack, with a $17,000 each. Varakorn Pubtaisong has been arrested in connection with the incident. Economically, Delta, a Thai manufacturer of data center and electric vehicle components, is expanding its investments under the direction of CEO Victor Cheng. Turning to the United States in Los Angeles, an elderly Sikh man, Harpal Singh, suffered a skull fracture and possible brain trauma after a brutal assault, though authorities are not treating it as a hate crime. New Zealand's Prime Minister, Christopher Luxon, criticized Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, saying, "He has lost the plot," after a parliamentary debate on recognizing a Palestinian state. New Zealand suggested it might join other nations in recognizing a Palestinian state. Sarah Shaw, a New Zealand woman, and her son remain in US immigration detention after attempting to re-enter the U.S. from Canada. A moderate earthquake struck New Zealand's lower North Island, causing no damage. Pakistan has recently reaffirmed its dedication to bolstering bilateral cooperation with the United States in the ongoing fight against terrorism. Simultaneously, the United States, under the leadership of President Trump, is actively pursuing agreements with Pakistan, focusing primarily on critical minerals and the evolving landscape of cryptocurrency. Adding another layer to its international relations, Pakistan is also solidifying its military alliance with China. Tragically, in northwestern Pakistan, a mortar strike amidst active military operations targeting militants led to the devastating loss of life for 2 children and their mother, underscoring the human cost of the conflict. Afghanistan is facing a looming water crisis in its capital, Kabul, a city of 6 million residents. Experts predict that Kabul could completely run out of water by the year 2030. The Afghan government is reportedly struggling to address the crisis effectively, primarily due to substantial financial constraints. Turning to the United Kingdom, the government has been under scrutiny for covertly allocating $320 million to suppress journalistic investigations into a significant data breach. This breach, involving British authorities, resulted in the exposure of sensitive personal data belonging to approximately 19,000 Afghan citizens. Myanmar is facing renewed scrutiny as an unbacked investigation reveals alleged torture and sex crimes within its detention facilities, prompting calls for perpetrators to be held accountable in court. Adding to the country's challenges, refugees residing in camps along the Thailand-Myanmar border are experiencing heightened hardship due to funding reductions, generating significant anxiety and impacting local economies. Shifting focus to seismology. The 2025 Myanmar earthquake is now the subject of scientific research, potentially yielding valuable information. Although scientists emphasize that precise earthquake prediction remains an elusive goal, Canada is facing significant disruptions as Air Canada cancels flights in anticipation of a strike by over 10,000 flight attendants. The flight attendants are protesting against what they describe as poverty wages and unpaid labor. The airline is preparing for a potential full shutdown. The country is also battling severe wildfires. Newfoundland and Labrador province have issued mandatory evacuation orders. 5 fires are currently classified as out of control. Thousands of residents have been evacuated from their homes. Peru is currently grappling with considerable political unrest. President Dina Boluarte recently enacted an amnesty law. This shields military and police from prosecution for human rights abuses. These abuses occurred during the 1982-2000 internal armed conflict. Human rights groups, the UN, and victims' families strongly condemn the law. They argue it denies justice to abuse survivors. Adding to the country's instability, former President Martin Vizcarra was imprisoned. He faces corruption charges. Vizcarra is now among 5 former Peruvian presidents jailed in recent years. This highlights significant corruption and accountability issues. Lebanon's president assured Iran's National Security Council head, Ali Larijani, that no faction within Lebanon has permission to hold arms or rely on foreign assistance. This declaration coincides with the Lebanese government's recent approval of initiatives designed to disarm Hezbollah, a militant organization and a significant regional ally of Tehran. Larijani's visit takes place in the midst of these unfolding events. Saudi Arabia is currently seeing its social norms tested, as Cristiano Ronaldo resides there with his fiancée Georgina Rodriguez. Despite them being unmarried, which is traditionally against the Islamic kingdom's laws. While normally such cohabitation is prohibited, it appears authorities are turning a blind eye to the situation, reflecting a potential shift in enforcement or special consideration given Ronaldo's high profile. This situation highlights the complexities of balancing tradition with modern influences and international figures within the country. Hong Kong's national security trial of Jimmy Lai faced a delay as Typhoon Pajal prompted the region's highest-level weather warning. The closing arguments were postponed. Lai, a jailed media mogul, has been in detention since December 2020. Western nations and human rights groups have called for his release. The United States is experiencing a shift in foreign student preferences due to policies enacted during the Trump administration. Many students now view Asian universities as attractive alternatives. The perceived hostility towards foreign students has made studying in the United States a riskier choice. Poland is seeing a surge in tech tourists, potentially due to climate change and admiration for the nation's economic growth. A South Korean collector, WHAM Tech, has amassed a significant collection of Polish posters, showcasing them at his museum in Seoul. Serbia is currently experiencing heightened political tensions as anti-government protests intensify, resulting in clashes between opposing factions. Demonstrations in Verbas escalated into violence, prompting riot police to intervene between supporters and opponents, gathered outside the Serbian Progressive Party offices. The confrontations led to numerous injuries, underscoring the deep divisions within the country. Spain is battling devastating wildfires that have already resulted in 2 fatalities. Thousands have been evacuated as the blazes consume vast tracts of land. Environment Minister Sarah Agazen warns that these fires serve as a stark reminder of the escalating climate emergency. In Turkey, wildfires have also claimed at least 1 life. Albania is similarly struggling to contain deadly blazes. Malaysia is currently grappling with concerns over political intimidation, highlighted by the attack on the son of former minister Rafizi Ramli. The 12-year-old was assaulted with a syringe in a shopping center car park, leading Rafizi to suspect a deliberate attempt to silence his political views. In a separate but equally significant development, Malaysia's highest court has opened a legal pathway for former Prime Minister Najib Razak to potentially serve house arrest. This alternative to imprisonment relates to his conviction and sentence, stemming from the massive UNNB corruption scandal, a case that has deeply shaken the nation. United States is currently scrutinizing the Smithsonian Institution's museums. The review aims to identify and remove what the government considers partisan narratives from exhibits. The Smithsonian Institution encompasses a vast network of museums holding millions of artifacts. The probe indicates a potential shift in how historical and cultural information is presented to the public. United Kingdom's National Army Museum is currently showcasing Beyond Burma. The exhibition highlights the contributions of African and Indian troops in the fight against Japanese forces in South Asia. During World War II, the rare artifacts belonging to soldiers who endured harsh conditions during the conflict are on display. Tonga's legislature approved legislation granting King Tupou greater control over foreign affairs. And this shift of foreign policy authority back to the monarchy has raised concerns about potential setbacks to democratic advancement. In Venezuela, Joseph Humeyer's appointment as a senior official in the U.S. Defense Department has raised concerns due to his past leadership of a think tank that disseminated false information about the Venezuelan Tren de Aragua TDA gang. An investigation by Inside Crime highlighted several instances of misinformation promoted by Humeyer's former organization regarding the TDA's activities and influence, potentially impacting US policy and understanding of the region. Europe is battling intense wildfires fueled by strong winds across Albania, Greece, Montenegro, Spain, and Turkey. Mexico is extraditing 26 high-ranking cartel members to the United States, fulfilling an agreement with the Trump administration. In the South China Sea, the United States deployed 2 warships to a contested shoal temporarily after a collision involving a Chinese vessel. Simultaneously, a Chinese fighter jet ordered a Philippine aircraft carrying journalists to leave the disputed Scarborough Shoal. Indonesia's second quarter economic growth reached 5.12%, exceeding expectations, though some academics question the accuracy of the figure as a true reflection of economic conditions. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky will visit Berlin on Wednesday to meet with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz as well as European and U.S. leaders ahead of the Trump-Putin summit. Papua New Guinea's Prime Minister James Marape has launched a competition to name the country's national rugby league NRL team, aiming for a name that promotes national unity and a strong partnership with Australia. Sri Lanka is facing its violent past as the excavation of a mass grave in Chemani prompts calls from the Tamil community for international involvement. Vietnam is embarking on a significant economic reform, the most substantial in a generation, with the ambition of becoming Asia's next tiger economy. Argentina has seen at least 87 deaths after patients were administered fentanyl contaminated with bacteria in hospitals. Guatemala saw 11 guards released by gang members after being held hostage in 2 prisons. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.